Let us come back together. As Presbyterians, you know that we do not believe in organized religion, and I think we just proved that. I now recognize the stated clerk, Paul Bells-Templeman, who will provide orientation to the Zoom features we will be using today as we conduct business.
Thank you, moderator. I'm Paul Bells-Templeman, minister member, serving as stated clerk in my spare time. And I want to talk about how to get permission to speak in this meeting, how to make motions, how to vote, and even how to change your view of the Zoom world we will inhabit for the next few hours. You may have come into the world screaming, but when you entered this Zoom meeting, you were muted. But many of you unmuted, and we've tried to keep folks muted, but that's challenging. Sometimes it's like the game whack-a-mole for the co-hosts. Now, there are several ways to unmute and to mute, and I will show you just one reliable way to do so. Next slide. Well, we need to pull the slide up. Screen, unpin the video, and then go to View and choose Gallery View. You should see a bunch of tiles. And let's all raise our hands and shake our fingers to say welcome to our new folks who are here in the meeting. All right, and now let's try it again for those who have returned. Hooray, thank you, welcome back. And now let's see if we can go back into speaker view. I'll ask our co-hosts. We have two new minister members of the Presbytery here. We have, is Chris De La Cruz here? Let's see if he's in the list. If you could spotlight him. I don't think he's here yet. We may have to try this another time. And is Shar here? Shar Mace. Yes, Shar is here.
Hello.
So if we can spotlight her. There you go. Hi, Shar. We can all see you. I hope that was okay. Welcome to the Presbytery. Shar is serving at St. John's in Camas, Washington. So we're grateful you're here. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
And yes, well, we're grateful you're here. So let's see, what was next? Are there any questions about seeking recognition or on motions on voting? And if you want to, I should have unpinned Shar because she probably doesn't want to be up there for the rest of the meeting. And then if you want, you can go back to gallery view. Any questions about seeking recognition or motions or on voting? Remember to raise your hand to seek recognition. You move your cursor to the bottom of the screen. You look for the, there are several hands raised. Okay. Moderator, would I have permission to call on them or? Okay, let's see. Susan Ireland, question. I'm not sure I have sound from.
I said I don't.
Let's see.
I don't have a question. I just don't know how to put my hand down.
Okay, so
just click it. You just click it again.
Susan, I don't think it's your problem. I think our house sound is turned down. So we'll ask you to repeat that in one moment, please. 1 second. We're so innovative here. We've faked ourselves out. Oh, they want to know how to put their hand down? Okay, so yeah. I believe it was answered in the chat. You can put your own hand down. We can put the hand down for you. Are there other folks who had questions? All the hands went away. Great. Barbara Campbell raised her hand. I'll recognize Barbara.
I was just playing around, sorry.
Can anyone hear what she said? Oh, she was just playing around. Well, that's great. I'm glad we're having fun at this meeting. I'm now going to call on Sharon Edwards this time to lead us in a pause from this business.
Hello, Cascades Presbytery. During our meeting over the next 2 days, we will be taking mind-body breaks for health, short breaks. And I don't know about you, but after that Zoom tutorial, I'm feeling a little tense. Just a little flashback. I worked with 2 people yesterday at the church, helping them figure out Zoom, little post-traumatic Zoom extravaganza. So I'm just going to invite you to move your shoulders forward, up, back, and down. And in a little bit, you're going to be hearing about the vagus nerve that runs from your brain in your neck all the way down your back into your abdomen. Go ahead and add some deep breathing, inhaling and exhaling. And then the other way, inhaling, backing up, exhaling forward and down, inhaling, backing up, exhaling forward and down. And now, hopefully you all are on mute. I'm going to invite you to bring your shoulders all the way up to your ears as tight as you can. Take a nice big inhale. And then we're going to exhale really loud. No one can hear you. Inhale. And one more time. Inhale. So as you sit through your meetings, occasionally notice if you need to sigh deeply, because a very nice, loud, expressive, intentional exhale calms your nervous system. Not that we need that necessarily. Rolling your shoulders wakes up that vagus nerve and helps bring more blood to your brain, so you can focus and concentrate on all the exciting things we're going to learn about and hear about during our meeting. Inhale, exhale, and can I hear an amen?
Amen.
Just want to make sure you know I'm done.
You have to walk. So if you are one of the 7 who is attending a Presbytery meeting for the first time, we issue you a collective welcome. Ruling elders, minister members, welcome all. We're going to be sending you a post-meeting survey via email at some point to get because we want your feedback, and we really need it as well, so we can improve the way we conduct these meetings, since we'll probably be doing that for a while. Throughout the meeting, I invite you to please make notes as you think of things to improve future virtual meetings. So let us on to business. Mr. Clerk, do we have a quorum?
A quorum is present.
And do we know how many ruling elders and ministers are at this point?
We have a lot of ruling elders and a lot of ministers.
Very good, very good. The first item for business is to adopt standing rules for the meeting. The electronic meeting standing rules are on pages 14 through 17 of Set A of the papers. The Presbytery Leadership Commission has reviewed the standing rules and makes the motion that the rules be adopted. Since the motion comes from a committee, it does not require a second. But since the motion is about rules that relate to parliamentary procedure, it will require a 2/3 vote. The motion reads, adopt the electronic meeting standing rules as distributed. Mr. Clerk, Would you like to speak to the formation of these rules to begin the discussion?
Moderator, the standing rules, the electronic standing rules, I should be clear, we have Presbytery standing rules that are still in force, except where these rules supersede them. But these rules were designed for electronic meetings, which this is one. And I believe by the next meeting, we'll adopt them for going forward, but I thought we would make them provisional again for this meeting. There weren't many changes. If you noticed, I did note that there were a couple of changes in the electronic standing rules. Basically, that we will use Zoom polls rather than the yes/no buttons. We hope that will be easier, more intuitive for folks to see. And the yes/no buttons were not available to folks on the phone either, so that was an issue that we can't resolve with folks joining by phone. And there is an addition of Rule 18, which simply we probably should put in our other standing rules, that is that we can use a consent agenda because according to Robert's Rules of Order, consent agenda can only be used if it's in your standing rules for the meeting. So that's what we have, and so I recommend adopting them so we have rules so we can begin the meeting.
Is there any discussion or amendment? Some of you may have been using the chat feature to visit with others or provide general information. We ask that you suspend that activity now so that we can watch for motions. If you have a motion to amend the rules, you may type it into the chat function now and send it to everyone by hitting enter. We ask that you begin your motion with the word, all in caps, motion. Whether you have an amendment or not, if you would like to speak, please use the raise hand icon found in the participants panel of the toolbar.
Are there any?
Okay. Is there anyone? No?
I believe we're ready to vote.
Are you ready for the vote on the motion to adopt the standing rules? We will vote on the motion to adopt the electronic standing rules by poll. When the poll is displayed, those in favor will click the yes button. Those opposed, click the no button. And if you are not voting, don't click either button. The poll will remain open for 10 seconds.
Did we have someone raise their hand?
Did we have?
So
Who raised it? Say again?
It's Lee Moiso.
Leah Lawrence, the chair recognizes Leah Lawrence.
she's watching and listening on the, there's no need, yeah.
No, I didn't mean to put that in there. Take that away.
Okay. Moving right along.
Was there another hand? Okay.
Okay. No one else? Okay. Beginning now, the poll will remain open for 10 seconds. The poll is now closed. The yeses have it. The electronic meeting standing rules are adopted. Now that we have established the rules to conduct this meeting, the docket is presented for adoption by the Presbytery Leadership Commission. Is the stated clerk aware of any changes to the docket?
Yes, moderator, I suggest amending the docket in this fashion. On Friday, take up the mental health grant report immediately before the report of the executive presbyters, and on Saturday, add a report from the Board of Pensions immediately after the report of the Board of Trustees. I've put these changes on a slide or two, which could now be posted on the screen. Why is that poll still up there? So you see on Friday, right after the Commission on Ministry, or that's today at 4:50 or whenever we get there, we would go to Wisdom of Incarnation, followed by the report of the executive presbyters. On Saturday, next slide, we would just add the Board of Pensions report following the Board of Trustees and right before unfinished business. I suggest those amendments be taken in gross.
The moderator assumes the motion to amend the docket as shown on the slide. We will attempt to amend the docket by unanimous consent. If you object to these changes, please use the raised hand icon found in the participants panel of the toolbar. Or if you can't find the raised hand icon, which I'm sure all of you can by now, you may unmute and say objection. Is there any objection? There being no objection, the docket is amended as shown on the screen. Are there any further amendments? We will now attempt to adopt the amended docket by unanimous consent. If anyone objects to these changes, they should use the raise hand icon, etc. There being no objection, the docket is amended as shown. There is an objection.
Ossenjager?
A hand.
The chair recognizes John Ossenjager.
Yeah, I wonder if you could just display again the changes to the docket on the screen so that I can make a note of them. Thank you.
The docket then is amended, accepted as
Is the poll
amended.
showing on your screen? Is the poll showing on your screen? Yeah. Okay, good.
It's showing on mine, yes.
Where are we at now? Do we need to?
One moment, please. Okay.
Have we adopted the docket yet?
Yes.
Okay. we
It has
amended
been
and
adopted as amended.
Okay.
The next item of business is the consent agenda. The consent agenda is a way to quickly handle
How did you get?
routine and non-controversial business matters
Came to me privately.
so that we can devote more time to the other more complicated or controversial matters. There are currently 12 items on the consent agenda. If you believe any of these items requires debate or wish to vote against one or more items, you will want to remove the items from the consent agenda. Any item that is not removed from the consent agenda will be adopted. Again, if you see an item in the consent agenda that you would like to discuss or oppose, please use the raise hand icon found in the participants panel of the toolbar in order to seek recognition. The moderator
I think so.
will recognize you.
I asked them. They're not getting.
And then please unmute and speak to
getting it.
specify and specify the item by number and then mute your microphone again. The clerk will remove the item so that it can be handled during the report of the group that proposed the business. Because the consent agenda has 12 items, let's take it in two parts so that we can see a summary of the items on the slides. I'll first ask if there are any objections for items 1 through 6. Can we have that slide? They have that slide now. Do we have any objections? There are no objections on items 1 through 6. Now let's see items 7 through 12. Thank you, tech crew. Do we have any objections to any of those 6 items, 7 through 12? We have no objections. If you, stated clerk, will you tell us what items remain on the consent agenda?
Moderator, my understanding is all items have
That
remained.
is it.
on
Okay.
there.
Is there any further objection to an item remaining on the consent agenda? We will attempt to adopt the amendment by unanimous consent. If anyone objects to adopting all of the items remaining on the consent agenda, they should use the raise hand icon. Is there any objection? There being no objection, the remaining items on the consent agenda are adopted by the Presbytery. We now come to new business. We will receive whatever items of new business there are. That means motions that you wish the Presbytery to take action on. Presbytery has a standing rule that says that ordinarily new business will be referred to a committee unless 2/3 of the Presbytery agrees to discuss it later on in the meeting. If you have not yet entered your new business into the chat as a motion, capital letters, this is now the time. I ask those of you using chat for our general edification to please refrain for a few minutes to allow for any new business to be seen as it is entered into the chat. Yes. We have a raised hand. Oh, Bill Van Nostrand. The chair recognizes Bill Van Nostrand. Hello?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Mr. Moderator and fellow presbyters, I have an item of new business that I think is rather timely. It involves a clergy colleague, a priest in our community who did not receive a green card and is now confined to his quarters by immigration and forbidden to say mass or do any other congregation work. I'm going to place the motion in chat so that you can all read it.
Thank you, Bill. Do we have that in chat? Not yet.
I think he sent it to me. Did my motion? Oh, I forgot to do what I said I was going to do.
I sent it to everyone.
Paul has it. He's busily trying to get it into the chat.
It's up now, right?
Excuse me?
Is it up now?
Okay, we have it up on chat now.
It's up twice, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, good. We've really done a good job then. Do we have?
Second.
Now that has been made as a motion, this resolution. Do we have a second? I'll give you a few minutes to read it over.
We do have a second.
We have a second. Do we have any discussion on the motion?
The motion can't be
Oh,
discussed.
it can't be discussed. I'm sorry, correction. But Bill,
Mr.
you said that this was of an urgent nature. Does the motion then to have it discussed at a later time in the meeting?
I would accept that as a friendly amendment, and in the interest of your time, Mr. Moderator, take this up later in the meeting so that people have a chance to digest it.
Okay, that requires, as I recall, a 2/3 vote.
Yes.
So let's, those in favor of discussing this later in the meeting, is the poll ready?
Yes.
Okay. If you will please now vote.
Excuse me, can you clear the previous voting? I still have a check mark in my, on my,
Oh, yes.
can you clear that out first?
Clear the what? The polling?
The polling, the previous one is still showing up on screens.
Do
Just
people see
select the red button. Close.
You want me to close at the
Yeah,
red?
you can close it yourself.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Starting now, the poll will stay open for 10 seconds. Do we consider the motion later in the meeting?
Okay, let's close the
John
poll.
Hasenegger, you have your hand raised again.
I did. I was trying to uncheck that, and it wasn't going away. But I just wanted to make sure we were clear on what we were voting on, because what
To
appeared on the
discuss the
screen said
resolution.
it made it look like we were voting on the motion.
No, we're just,
But-
no,
but-
we're
Or
voting.
the motion
to
might have been to
the
adopt the
resolution.
proposal.
We have voted, the ayes have it, to discuss the resolution later in this meeting, rather than sending it to a committee.
Okay, thank you. That was helpful. But when the thing came up on the screen, it seemed like we were voting on the proposal itself.
No,
But-
it's just there so you could see what the resolution was, and if you thought it worthwhile to consider later in the meeting.
I understand.
Okay. Do we have any other motions? Stated clerk, have we received any new business other than that?
I don't believe so.
Okay, we have only the one item which we have voted on. That concludes the new business. Let's proceed now to the report of the Commission on Ministry. Chair recognizes Lauren Bostwick. Is Lauren Bostwick present?
Sorry, I had to unmute my microphone. The Commission on Ministry moves that we authorize the Commission on Ministry South region to merge Community Presbyterian Church of Malin, Oregon, with Community Presbyterian Church of Tule Lake, California, in order to form a congregation named the Basin Presbyterian Church once all other legal and ecclesiastical steps have been taken. You can find further information. I think it's on page 6 of your background papers if you want a little more information.
Thank you, Lauren. Since the motion has been made by a commission, a second is not required. Is there discussion? Please use the raised hand icon in the participant panel to be recognized. After I recognize you, please unmute yourself, introduce yourself by name, ruling or teaching elder, and your church or ministry. After you speak, please mute the microphone again. Is there any discussion? The chair recognizes Jeff Binder.
Hi, Pastor Jeff Bender, Valley Community Presbyterian Church, Portland. Just a quick question about the buildings, and I was wondering what the plans are for the buildings. I recognize that some of them are being used for Sunday worship, but I wasn't clear about just the continued use of 2 buildings for one congregation.
So thanks for the question. I'm going to refer Mike and ask Mike Hubbard if he would address that, because he's the chair of the Commission on Ministry in the South. I don't have an answer for that. Is Mike here?
Yes, he is.
Great.
Mike Hubbard, Commission Ruling Elder, First Presbyterian Medford, Chair of COM South, and actually the former pastor at Tule Lake. In answer to that, the church, there are actually 4 properties considered. There are 2 manses. The one in Tule Lake is a long-term lease that has been in effect for several years. The one in Malin, I believe the remodel is nearly complete, and that will be used as a rental property as well. The combined new congregation basin community will worship in the Malin building, and that the vote on that is reflected in those background papers. Development that does not show, because it was unfolding even as this was being sent to the docket. The Board of Trustees, as I understand it, has approved the lease of the Tule Lake building to a Hispanic advocacy group working with young people. I believe the name of it is Tidy, Mighty, and Strong. It's a kind of a preschool, elementary school program. And someone on the Board of Trustees might be able to give an update on that, but that's how the properties stand now.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay, Jeff, does that answer your question?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Okay, is there any further discussion? Then are you ready to vote? The motion should be on the screen shortly if it isn't already.
Yeah, let's show that motion so people know what they're voting on.
There you go. We will vote on the motion by poll. You're probably getting rather tired of this, but we like to make sure. When the poll is displayed, those in favor will click the yes button and those opposed will click the no button. If you are not voting, don't click either button. The poll will remain open for 10 seconds. The poll is closed. Stated clerk.
The vote is 94 to 1. So 94 in favor.
Then the motion passes.
Moderator, that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. And now let's hear from Sharon Edwards, who received a grant from the General Assembly to promote mental health in the Presbytery. The chair recognizes Sharon Edwards.
Thank you. Waiting to be spotlighted.
There you go.
There I go. Oh, there I go.
You're
Here I am.
spotlighted.
Thank you. Oh, good. Thank you. One Monday, May morning, I could not get out of bed. I was depressed. One of the reasons was I had eaten my breakfast ice cream for dinner the night before, and there was no more ice cream. I was also grieving a change in my life. I was also, in the pandemic, and I was in an existential angst. What was my purpose, oh God, in this time? And God was not answering. So I didn't get out of bed. and I was scrolling on my phone, of course, and I stumbled upon an interview with a psychiatrist from Washington University. And she said, we already have, and we will continue to see in the months and years ahead, a drastic increase in mental health issues. Depression, anxiety, potentially suicides, trauma, reoccurring, revisiting trauma, and other maladies that are brought about by stress. Now, I felt a little spark inside me, but it still didn't get me out of bed. So I moved on to email on my phone. And there I opened an email that had an invitation. It was an invitation to participate in a training that I had been so interested in but could not afford. Now, this training involved learning about neuroscience and its effects on our health, as in learning about our brain and our nervous system and our bodies and our mental, emotional, physical health and the connection between all of them. And this invitation came from the professor, particularly to me, inviting me to participate free of charge. Well, that spark got a little bit bigger. Eventually, I did get out of bed. And during the summer, as I went through this training, I was in awe of how fearfully, intricately, wonderfully, marvelously we are made. I took great delight as I learned about the connection between all of these pieces, that there are so many spiritual practices that are a part of our heritage that was developed years ago, centuries ago, that we now understand scientifically why they work. And I also kind of took some more delight in the fact that I had already been offering some of these in retreats or during worship or in small groups or one-on-one without even knowing the impacts that it would have and why it works so well. And then along came an opportunity through the PCUSA, a mental health grant, an opportunity to offer these learnings to more folks. Now, I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. But before I do that, I'm going to screen share and show you a graph. Now, this graph is a simple laid out piece of information. I shared it at the end of September with the pastors at the new pastors retreat. And there were quite a lot of eye openings going on. There were quite a lot of emails that went back and forth afterwards. So I want you to see this. So first of all, this is an invitation for you to consider, maybe you've been experiencing some things over the last several months. You see, our bodies, our minds, our brains are all working together all the time. Our bodies receive 11 million messages a minute that go to our brain. And our brain's main job is to keep us safe. That's the way it has been designed. So down here in the green area is what we call the social engagement time. Now, the ventral, I promised to talk to you about the vagal nerve that runs from the brain down the neck, all the way through our bodies down into our abdomen. Now, when we are in a gentle state, we have joy, we're in the present, we're grounded, we're curious, we have compassion, we're mindful. When things are calm and we feel safe, that's the area that we reside in. However, things can change. Things, especially externally, can change. And what happens is our body starts bringing in all this information and our brain starts clicking away. and sending new messages back down into our bodies. Some of you, I'm sure, have heard of this, about the flight-fight arena. Little things like going to the grocery store might catch you the plague, or little things like all of a sudden having to work from home and school your child. Other things, many things, stresses, strains, predispositions to anxiety and other things start ramping up as we get aroused by what is going on around us. Now, what happens in this place is that we begin to not be able to think straight. I actually one day put the ice cream from lunch into the refrigerator. So when it was time for me to have it for dinner, it was all melted. Other things that happen as we are in this fight-flight arena is we start to do damage in the long term to our physical health. The other thing that happens is we begin to have a difficult time being empathetic with others. And then if we continue in this place and we become overwhelmed, we move up into this area of freeze, of numbness and depression, shutdownness. This is the part where we don't get out of bed, like ever, for a long time. So I would like you to look at this for just a moment. And I'm wondering if you can have some compassion for yourself. If you find yourself in any of these places. For you see, these areas are important. They do keep us safe. But there are times when we live in the red and the blue areas, we lose connection with ourselves, in our relationships. We lose the ability to think and discern and to problem solve. We lose the ability to even, I would say, feel a sense of connection to God, even though we know very well that God is with us in the midst of all of that. So now we're going to break out for 10 minutes into breakout groups of 3. And all I'm going to ask you to do is share with each other, talk about a time where you were somewhere on that graph. What were you doing? What was happening? How was your body feeling? What were you doing? How did you get there? How did you stay there? Each of you will get about 2 to 3 minutes. Introduce yourself, maybe say where you're from, or maybe just talk briefly about what you saw in that graph or what you've been experiencing perhaps. I know there'll be a tendency to analyze our society with that graph, and if that's where you're comfortable, that's okay. So I'm going to ask Paul or whoever the magic break room person is, you'll be asked to allow yourself to go to a break room and unclick. And I do encourage you to not problem solve, but to just listen to each other. Is that a deal? Okay. On your marks, get set, let's go.
Thank you, Sharon. Is the breakout being handled, folks? I want to thank you for your presentation and for introducing the concept of breakfast ice cream, which I'm still thinking about.
Okay, I'm just going to quickly go over the grants that the program that we're offering through the Presbytery. It's called the Wisdom of Incarnation. Our bodies contain so much wisdom, and we often forget about that. And this program is a virtual community to equip pastors and chaplains for self-care and the care of others. And then I'm just going to move really quick. The goals are a community of laughter and support and learning, and we'll dive into the fascinating world of neurobiology and the effects on the health, quality of life, relationships, and what our own tendencies are. And we'll be learning tools and resources that are effective for resilience and health. And then we will also be exploring a plan. How do we integrate these learnings into ministry? The kickoff retreat will be the afternoon of January 24th into Monday the 25th. And then we will have a rhythm of a one-day retreat, February through June. And whoever ends up participating will help us decide when that is. Some of the topics we'll explore at each of those months are prayer and the brain. Believe it or not, different kinds of prayer elicit different kinds of brain waves. And there are brain waves that are good for depression, anxiety, focus, memory, open-hearted empathy, and quieting our minds. Grief in the body, mindful self-compassion, neuroscience and anti-racism, and in relationships, and trauma and healing. There we go. You can easily find more information in Cascades Connections. The leadership team has approved us opening this to pastors and other presbyteries, so you won't necessarily be stuck. I mean, you will get to delight in the presence of other pastors and chaplains if that ends up happening. Just look for more information over the next couple of weeks. And if you're an elder who have a pastor or a chaplain in your life, I hope that you'll encourage them to participate. So everyone take a deep breath in, exhale. Thank you for your time, and peace be with you all. And I'm supposed to walk off.
Thank you, Sharon. And what do we call that exercise, and what does it accomplish? No, we won't go there. Okay. Thank you very much. And now for the report of executive presbyters, tech people. We are going to run a little late, but because the PLC report is a short one, we'll just go right through the end as we have it on the script. Okay, so our next item of business is the report of the executive presbyters, and we will first hear from Clark Scalera.
Right, thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. I am
spotlight Clark.
I'll wait 1 second.
Or Sharon, perhaps you could lip sync Clark.
There I am. So nice to be with everybody today. Thank you all for carving time out this evening to participate in this meeting and this work. We're grateful for you. I will try to keep my remarks as brief as possible. I don't need to go into great depth on the whole litany of challenges that you all have, and we all have been facing basically this entire year and even before that. But what I do want to highlight is just that cumulative strain, that cumulative stress and pressure that we are under, and to say thank you for your perseverance through that, and thank you for continuing forth as a light even in these dark and challenging times. I've been so inspired by the work that you've been doing, your consistency in continuing to offer divine worship week in and week out. Staying connected with people when that is so different and so challenging. Also deeply inspired by that share grant, the stimulus grant videos that we just got to witness, and those stories that have emerged out of how you've considered loving your neighbors and lived that out even in dramatically challenging times. So thank you for that work. I also want to highlight a phrase of Jesus's, which is, of course, when he was asked about the greatest commandment, he said to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength and body. And the second commandment is like it, love your neighbor as yourself. And this is an encouragement from me to all of you to find ways to not just love your neighbor, but to love your neighbor as you love yourself. And consider how you can take care of yourself, how you can lean into this connectional body to find additional care and support for you. We care about you, and we want you to take care of yourself for this long haul, for this challenging duration. To that end, we are trying to build some infrastructure to get good resources at your fingertips. I'm so glad I'm kind of coming right after Sharon. That has been one of the initiatives, that wonderful grant that we received. and that Sharon and Hillary Roethlisberger will be implementing in the coming year. Please do consider getting involved with that if ongoing practice could be a benefit in your life. Additionally, we've also been partnering with the Presbyterian Disaster Assistance, particularly coming out of the wildfires. However, we also recognize that it hasn't just been fires that have created trauma within our congregations and deep challenges for pastors and other church leaders throughout our presbytery. And so the Presbytery Disaster Assistance will have a representative that I believe will be speaking tomorrow to offer just some helpful tips and on resources that they provide. Additionally, they will be holding a one-time workshop that will be taking place next Thursday, November 12th at 1:00 p.m. And that will be focused on resiliency and renewal during this time. So I do hope you'll consider joining us for that event. More information can be found on the Presbytery's website, and you can also register for that. It will be an online event. And again, all this comes with just a reminder of how valuable you all are, how much your light inspires people throughout this region, and how grateful we are for you continuing to walk this walk of faith in community, especially during these challenging times. So thank you for those initiatives. Know you are cared for and loved and prayed for, and please also find ways to care for yourselves. And if we can be supportive in that, don't hesitate to pick up the phone and let us know. Thank you. That concludes my report.
Thank you very much, Clark. Do we have any questions, Clark? No? Let's turn to Brian for his report.
It is so great to see all of you. I think one of the things that I'm realizing in this time is just that ability to connect is so important. And even though it's not ideal to do it in person and share a meal, just really great to be able to have this time to connect and see all your faces and feel the energy of the Presbytery here again. As I was thinking about my report this time, actually, I thought of one of our hymns and a couple of verses from it. So I'd like to start off with one of the verses from God of Our Life. God of the past, our times are in thy hand, with us abide. Lead us by faith to hope's true promised land. Be thou our guide. With thee to bless, the darkness shines as light, and faith's fair vision changes into light. I know 3 years ago when I accepted this position, I did so with the knowledge that the Presbytery would eventually hit a fork in the road. And I believe that that fork had to do with being intentional about living into a transformative model that serves as a bridge to the future, or learning to live faithfully and gracefully through a continued period of shrinking resources and decline that we've been experiencing now for almost 50 years. And so my message today is really very simple. I think we are there. We are at that fork in the road. We have come right up against that threshold where we must decide now whether to step into something uncertain and unknown, or try to rebuild something a little more familiar. Either responses can be faithful, both require energy. So during the next year, you should expect to see various invitations from your Presbytery leadership to cross over that threshold into the kind of Presbytery that we believe God is inviting us. And two of those opportunities are before us right now. The first is that the Presbytery of the Cascades has been awarded a Synod Opportunity Grant to study the growing trend toward part-time ministry in a grant that we are naming Designing for the New Norm. You may have already realized this, but we have 45 of our churches that have less than full-time ministers, and 53 of our pastors are either part-time or in temporary positions. I know when I first got into ministry over 30 years ago, we used to think of those as the exception to the rule, and it is clear that they are now becoming the norm. A couple of weeks ago, we sent out invitations to all of the churches and the pastors who we believed fit this profile, and over the coming couple of weeks, we're going to try to build 2 cohorts, one of churches and one of pastors of about 8 to 10 people each. And if you haven't already applied and are interested in doing this, if you would let me know in the chat whether you would like to have an introductory Zoom meeting first before actually sending in the application. I talked to Deborah Wright, who's our consultant with this, and we thought maybe an introduction would be helpful. So just let us know in the chat if you're interested in that, and we will put that together. And the other place that I think we are clearly at the threshold is in our long-range financial sustainability plan that we started over 2 years ago. We had intended to have this plan in place for the 2022 budget cycle, but the coronavirus has actually not postponed, but accelerated our need to marry our vision, our mission, and our financial priorities much sooner than we had expected. So tomorrow you will be presented with a budget that our trustees believe is fiscally prudent and responsible for this time. But we also wanted to let you know that we anticipate that that there will be a proposed amended budget sometime during the year 2021 that's in line with our proposed vision and mission that we are moving quickly towards. I want to tell you that almost all of my ministry has been about walking with people, organizations, and congregations through a process of transformation. I was in probation work, hospice, and other congregational work. And I say this sort of tongue in cheek, but 2021 is when we find out if I'm the right person for the job, for this time, and for the presbytery. I'd like to close with the 3rd verse from God of Our Life. God of the coming years, through paths unknown, we follow thee. When we are strong, Lord, leave us not alone. Our refuge be. Be thou for us in life our daily bread, our heart's true home, when all our years have sped. Mr. Moderator, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Brian. Do we have any questions for Brian? There being no further questions for Brian, we move on to the next item on the docket, which is the report of the Presbytery Leadership Commission. Before I recognize you, Eileen, I want to say that having done this for only a few hours, I have boundless admiration for the way you handled the job last year. So, Chair of the Presbytery Leadership Commission, Eileen Sheeler, will you give your report?
Thank you very much. I'm reflecting that the multitude of technology that you have there may be a handicap almost, but that'll be for later. And no, you are all very, very happy that I am not singing. So I'll just start off with that. Thank you, Brian. And I will not do that. My name is Eileen Sheeler, and I'm a ruling elder from John Knox and Kaiser, and I'm also chair of PLC, Presbytery Leadership Commission. My job is to give the nuts and bolts of a little bit of Clark and what Brian outlined. In July, when my term as the PLC chair began, we had already established weekly or bi-weekly Zoom meetings as pretty much the norm instead of quarterly meetings. That pattern has continued, unfortunately, as we find ourselves responding to pandemic, structural racism, and wildfire issues. And again, unfortunately, we have no indication that this pace will slow down anytime soon. It's interesting for me to realize that PLC is the only presbytery group where members are chosen by virtue of their position on another group. The bylaws say that we function as a coordinating body for the presbytery. And in these times, collaboration and coordination have been absolutely critical. So I want to share with you what we've been working on over the last 4 or 5 months, and then what's in our immediate future. You've heard about some of these, and I'll skim through them, but others have not yet been mentioned. The Farmington Road Property Task Force continues to work with the Interfaith Levin Community Land and Housing Coalition and a developer on an affordable housing project. Collaborating with a developer is a huge step forward in this long-term process. Doesn't mean we've made any decisions, but they are helping us to understand this whole process as we move toward a recommendation for the presbytery and move forward. PLC reviewed and approved a proposal by the Commission on Ministry to redesign how its work is accomplished. We plan to revisit that proposal for possible implementation during 2021. Some of that work will be under the budget review. We did complete the work on the motion referred in July to remove gender-specific pronouns, which you approved, and in fact, the work has been done. We continued to support Clark and Brian in their continuing work with the wildfire recovery assistance. We approved applications for 2 grants that Brian mentioned. The one from GA with Sharon and Hillary for embodied practices for mental health, and one from Synod, the Opportunity Grant for designing the new norm. We also supported an application for a Lilly grant that unfortunately wasn't funded, but we did do the support work. We continue to maintain resource lists on our website concerning reopening and structural racism for everyone to use, pastors and elders and church members. The Vital Congregations Initiative continues with 10 congregations in our presbytery. We have adapted the model to fit, well, sort of to fit the pandemic situation. How do you fit the pandemic? As well as any other changing circumstances that the churches have become involved in. If you have questions about the Vital Congregations Initiative, Barbara Campbell continues to be the contact for that. The special committee charged by the PLC to recommend hiring practices for the presbytery finished a draft of hiring practices for appointed staff this last week. PLC is eager to collaborate on finalizing the process, and we hope to have a document to share with the presbytery in March. We continue to monitor the effects of the pandemic and the divisive political climate on the health and energy of our pastors, our congregations, and our committees. And Clark's tangible care for us is reflected in most of what we talk about. How will it affect the energy? Do we have the energy to do this? We try very hard to consider that. Last, but certainly not least, one of our primary responsibilities is working on the budget. In early August, we compiled a proposed budget based on input from affected groups, and we referred it to the trustees to be reviewed through the budget consultation process. We were just gaining our balance from kind of a rough spring and summer, and this was before the wildfires. It has become very clear to us that normal, more than ever, is simply a setting on the clothes dryer, and certainly not something we can plan to return to. The new normal is fluid. It requires constant adaptability and flexibility, always keeping one ear and one eye open for what we sense might be coming. And I can tell you right now that this does not provide comfort for anyone who is responsible for managing a budget. In August, we said, let's put into the budget what we must do, what we want to do, and know that we will have to work through it all to what we can do. You'll hear more about the proposed budget tomorrow morning from Steve Hammond. But in the coming weeks and months, PLC will be looking at each budget line item through the lens of our mission statement and its goal of supporting individual churches and the connections between churches, Presbytery, Synod, and GA. There's going to be some difficult conversations and some really hard decisions as we work toward a sustainable Presbytery budget, guided by our continuing visioning process, somewhat accelerated under Brian's direction. As we look ahead to a future in which the only true constant is God's love and care for all, we ask for your prayers. If you have questions or input on budget topics or anything else, please contact me or Brian or Clark so your input can be added to the conversation. I hold on to this thought. We are the church together, each of us and all of us, working to see in a mirror dimly where the Spirit is leading us. We know in our hearts the truth of the next verse of Paul's letter to the Corinthians. And now faith, hope, and love abide, these three, and the greatest of these is love. Mr. Moderator, this concludes my report.
Thank you very much, Eileen. Are there any questions prompted by the report of the PLC? Seeing none, we move on to the next item on the docket, which is recess. Our afternoon business is completed. At the end of this little announcement, we will recess. We have run about a quarter of an hour overtime, so we will return not at 6:45, but at 7 o'clock. At the beginning of the recess, Sharon Edwards will be available to answer any questions you have about the grant and the embodied knowledge behind it. And at 6:30, we will show the second video. It's actually the fourth video, which shares what Cascades Presbytery churches did with their stimulus grants. So you can choose to stay logged into Zoom during the break with the camera on or off, or you may choose to log out and then log back in at 7 o'clock or a little before using the same code the same link that you received in the email to log in originally. I've asked Eileen to offer thanks for our dinner. Eileen?
And Sharon snuck in with just a tiny little request for a bit of a promotion. So I'm going to do that gladly, by the way, and then end in prayer. So she reminds us that we're going to weave some opportunities to experience and learn about these mind-body practices for our health. If you're like me, some of us are saying, yeah. Well, it does work. Many studies have concluded that a concentrated mind is truly a happy mind. In other words, being present is good for our health. So as we go on break and before I say grace, I invite you to consider being fully present to whatever you will be doing. When your mind wanders, focusing on your breathing can restore your presentness. So I invite you to a few moments of silence so you can practice that focus on breathing before I offer a prayer. Let us pray. Loving God, we give you thanks for the blessing of technology that enables us to gather with our friends and colleagues as a presbytery. As we take this meal break, we ask for your blessing on those who have planted, harvested, transported, stocked, sold, and prepared the food and drink on our tables. We also ask that you bless this time away from technology, that we may be aware of your presence and open to renewal of body, mind, and spirit, so we can gather again and work together for the coming of your kingdom of justice, love, and peace. And all God's people say together, Amen.
Amen. We stand adjourned until 7 o'clock. The meeting will come to order. Welcome back. I hope you all had an excellent dinner. We had an excellent pizza. We have a few announcements to begin with. And first, let me introduce Kathy Runyon, the Synod Stated Clerk.
You're going to spotlight her? I'll spotlight her. She's muted though.
Thank you, Mr.
Kathy,
Moderator.
you're okay. You're no longer muted. Thanks.
Hear me now. Great. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Moderator, for recognizing me and for the authorization to bring greetings and share a little bit of news from the Synod. I am, as you just said, the stated clerk for the Synod of the Pacific. I love coming to Cascades meetings because I know a lot of you from seminary days or Synod gatherings. And as Linda Stewart-Kalen just said, hey there, it is good to see you all. So thank you for welcoming me here. In addition to saying hi on behalf of Synod staff, I wanted to let you know that the Synod right now is particularly encouraging you, that is you congregations and you, the Presbytery, to consider investing with the Synod. Deposits may be as low as $1,000 or as high as you want. Investment income is used to cover Synod expenses, and more importantly, what we make off investments benefits our congregations and presbyteries because most of it is returned to you in block grants. But why you need to know about it right now is the investment rates at the Synod are significantly higher than those offered commercially. And so if you have for example, an account in a local credit union, you may get up to 4 times as much by moving it to the Synod. So we want you to know that the Synod rates are great right now. And if you need information on how to invest with the Synod, contact Danielle Williams, the investment and loan coordinator. Her contact information, like all of the central office staff, is on the Synod website at synodpacific.org. I am impressed with what you all are doing, particularly was touched by the stories of the fire response and how you helped one another so much, and the video on what you were doing with the grants from the Presbytery. Good stuff, and I'm glad that we are partners in mission in this region. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. We'll hear now about Bisbee grants from Don Shaw. Welcome, Don.
Thank you. We spent the greater part of this meeting talking about some of the stresses we're all going through. And I certainly don't need to relist them. We've not only heard them, we've also shared at a personal level what we're going through. And so it's a time to say, so where do we go from here? Well, Sharon said that, of course, if you're a pastor or if you're a chaplain, there's a great program available to help you move forward from there. And of course, Clark made it very clear that Presbytery is there to help us. And Brian shared how Presbytery is also going through its own stresses and decision points and fork in the road. And so the problem comes up though, what about the rest of us? And this is where the Bisbee grant comes in. For people who are not Presbytery staff or not clergy, there is another possibility, and that is the Bisbee grant. Now, Catherine Bisbee in 1991 set aside a chunk of money and designated that the earnings would go to a community grant available in Cascades Presbytery to its churches. Now, typically, these grants run about $1,000, so they're not huge grants, but hopefully they're enough to enable people to think, so what can I use this for to move forward in the issues of the time? Quite by circumstance alone, this year the topic is mental health and how the church can meet the stresses caused by our times in the areas of mental health. And so I want to encourage you to go to the website, go under the tab Documents, and one of the third or fourth items down there says Grants. Click that, and you can read about the Bisbee grant and the application process and the deadline, which this year will be November 30th. So ask yourself, where is your congregation or your community hurting right now? How is this impacting community mental health? And what can your congregation do to address that with a few dollars stimulus money or seed money to get going? The money's waiting to be granted. Fill out an application. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you, Don. Our next announcement is from Ron Hagan with the Presbyterian Foundation. Welcome, Ron.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. It's good to be with Cascade Presbytery again. And on behalf of the foundation, I want to bring you greetings and to know that we are walking beside you, knowing full well that you have had challenges throughout this past year, not only with the pandemic and racial issues regarding those who are disenfranchised from our society, and of course the fires. And you've been on our minds and our prayers. Every time we get together at our staff meeting, I've been asked, how's Cascade Presbytery doing? And I sing your praises because of all that you are doing in your churches and in the Presbyterian worldwide. What I want to do for you this evening is kind of outline some of the things that the foundation has to offer you. One of the things that I was reading in regards to the history of offering is what, and maybe this is the first time that this gentleman's name has been invoked, but a 3rd century theologian named Tertullian said this about the offering in the early church. He says, those offerings are really the trust funds of piety. And piety is so important in our life because it is an exercise of our faith. It's an exercise of what we believe in Jesus Christ. But those funds are housed in a variety of ways in this new normal. And one is online giving. And we have a platform that can help you regarding online giving. If you don't have an online giving program, we would really recommend that you think about that and talk with me, even though churches have come to me and said, you know, we are not online giving proficient, or our folks are not used to doing computers. I bet they're probably used to doing computer issues now and know how to use those computers. So come to me and we can talk about that. But let me just briefly give you kind of 8 ways that you could look at your online giving program and possibly optimize your giving page. The first one is to make the giving button on your home page obvious. It's typically on the right-hand corner. Online donors will lose interest and leave your website if they can't find your donation page easily. And we have found that people will watch worship that maybe don't even attend on Sunday morning. So if they know how to give and it's easy to give, then you will be able to maybe receive more of that, the trust of piety for your church. Ensure only one click is required to move from the home page to the donation page. Donors do not want to spend time searching or navigating, making their donations. Ensure and number 3, ensure your donation page is easy to navigate. Test your donation page to make sure it's easy to make a gift. Pastors and elders and deacons, you test it out as well. Make sure that it's easy to give in regards to their people who want to further the ministry of your church. Check the default settings established by your service provider. Make sure that people can give recurring gifts, not just one gift. We have found that people who give recurring gifts are much more to give more in the ensuing months. So if they can give a recurring gift rather than just one gift, that's so important. Make the amount of information that must be entered by the donor in order to complete a transaction as minimal as possible. Speed and ease of use are critical to the donor giving experience. Number 6, give the donor the option to donate to cover credit or debit card transaction fees. Many platforms do this. The online giving platform with the foundation allows that. And this option will result in 30 to 50% of donors covering their fees. And then have a gratitude plan. I cannot express this more. Thanking people who donate. Maybe those who give first have a email that are initial givers that you can show or you can send out. Have something for those who maybe give regularly, but now they're giving online, and thanking them as well. Make sure you thank people. It's essential. And then make sure your website is optimized for viewing on tablets and phones. Almost 2/3 of all internet traffic is on mobile devices. Make sure donors can easily navigate through your website, donation page on any smartphone or tablet. We have an ability to download an app, text to give, and all the different kind of on-ramps for giving. Make sure people know that they can give through their IRA, which is a qualified charitable deduction. Make sure that they can do stock giving as well. And if your church can't do that or doesn't have a mechanism to cash the stocks into liquidity, we can help you do that. But all those different ways are kind of on-ramps to the free way of giving and enhance that trust funds of piety. I'll end with this. I like Maya Angelou referring to generosity. She said, "I've learned that you shouldn't go through life with a catcher's mitt on both hands. You need to be able to throw something back." So God bless you. I'm here. I'm the Ministry Relations Officer for the Northwest. I'm here for you. I will put my number on the chat room so that you can give me a call. My number's on the Presbyterian Foundation website, which has a lot of different ministries that you can plug into. So, Mr. Moderator, that ends my my report.
Thank you, Rob. We appreciate the work you do at the Presbyterian Foundation, and regret that you missed the breakout group on the theology of Tertullian. It was riveting.
All right, great. I'm sorry I missed that too.
Okay. Our next item on the agenda is the report of the treasurer given by our very own treasurer, Craig Butler. Craig.
Thank you very much. I'm kind of waiting for my charts to come up here. All right. I have the pleasure of giving you a briefing about how things have been going financially with our presbytery, and the report is based on the figures in your packet, which ended on September 30th, so 3/4 the way through the year. And there's a theme through this, 2 themes actually. This has been a very difficult year for 2 reasons. One is the COVID experience, and the other is the experience of changing to a new accounting system. So let's go to the next chart, please. There's Steve, thank you. COVID is affecting everything we did this year, but I have much better news this meeting than I had last meeting. The graph I've got up here shows a comparison month by month of how much of the budget for each year we had attained by that month. So the green line is how much per capita had come in, how much percentage of our budget had come in by the end of September in 2019. And the red line is 2020. And you could see that a significant gap opened up in April, May, June. And I'm delighted to say that it has largely closed, such that our per capita shortfall is only about 4% worse than it was in 2019. And in September, partnership giving is actually coming in a little stronger in terms of a percentage of budget in 2020 than it did in 2019 through the end of September. Now, unfortunately, Steve, I'm getting a message asking me to start my video, so I'm just gonna blow that away. Hopefully that's not a problem. Unfortunately, in October, both these gaps opened up a little bit more. So you'll see at the end of this presentation, I urge you to catch up on your per capita and your partnership giving. But the fears we had, the deep fears we had in April and May of a horrible year have evaporated, and we have a lot to be thankful for. Next chart, please. Yeah, there we go. So I like to talk about the big questions, the major things we have to keep our eye on. First, can we pay our bills? Yes, we have 10.5 times short-term assets for every dollar we have in short-term liabilities. By short-term, I mean coming due within a year. Per capita, I put in yellow status because we do have a shortfall of about $20,000. Partnership giving is on track, doing very well. Are we within budget? Well, no, and I'll talk a little bit more about this on the next page. We've had extra payouts, so the challenge grants and so forth, but some of this was offset by a PPA loan we've taken out. Can we meet our program goals? Yes, we can. In fact, we are, and we've had more energy than usual. I think it's not lost on anyone here that we've had additional programs this year. It's kind of been nice to see all the energy around there. Personnel costs have come in under budget. The one thing that I've got yellow turning to red, and this was alluded to by Brian and our moderator of PLC, is the spending from reserves. I am projecting that we will spend almost $400,000 this year from the reserves that are set aside by the trustees or the PLC or this presbytery for specific purposes. That's called restricted reserves. However, we will be able to transfer about $3,000 back into unrestricted reserves and $13,000 into the administrative unrestricted reserves. So in terms of if it wasn't for these special projects, we'd be pretty much right on our budget. The endowment at the end of September, good news, was slightly above the start of the year and almost 3% above where it was a year ago. And that number would probably be about a 10% after this week's action in the stock market, which was up quite a bit. So we can be grateful that the endowment is held up at, despite the big market decline in March and April. Next chart, please, Steve. A little more detail on the 2020 budget. The administrative side, I'm projecting will be over the budget about $5,400. The program side about $86,000. Why? Well, we did the $99,000 of challenge grants. We beefed up our technology grants. We haven't given out all of this $30,000, but we put $30,000 in the pool that churches could ask for. We knew that many of you would need to seek help as you begin to move more and more online and do virtual worship. We also, in our 2020 budget, and this is fixed for the budget for next year, didn't include estimates for Barnabas Technology or Vitality grants, and that $86,000 overage includes them. We're going to spend at least $86,000 on Barnabas alone. So if you're not familiar with it, Barnabas is a emergency help for a church with a hole in the roof or a broken boiler or a leaking basement or whatever it is. It tides over until or actually pays for half of the repair until they can get other funds perhaps. We've also had a significant underspend versus budget on personnel because we haven't filled a couple of positions for a few months, and we converted a consultant into a part-time employee in the accounting department, which helped a lot with the personnel budget as well. The next item, or the next page, these are the things that we did that we didn't plan on doing when we entered 2020. And they're more or less not in order of importance, they're in order of the time in which they occurred. As the pandemic started to hit, our Korean congregations faced significant needs, and the Korean Ministry Fund was only down to only $10,315. So we made the decision to liquidate it, and that was split among 2 congregations. We did obtain a PPP loan for $91,000, which we either have to pay back or explain how we meet the criteria to keep the money, which is more likely what we will do. We refreshed the technology grants. I talked about that on the previous page. We issued COVID Ministry Challenge grants to all of our 99 congregations. 1 congregation returned it. This was half paid out of unrestricted program reserves and half out of the new missions team budget for this year. So that was $1,000 going to each congregation in the Presbytery. We had a number of grant pass-throughs through Synod or GA for various purposes involving hunger or wildfire relief or other issues that we have spent. And then we just had the major wildfire relief effort, which at the end of September had raised $13,875. I think in the next presentation, you're going to get an updated figure that is a good deal higher than that. And then Brian mentioned a part-time clergy study that we started where we have to pay $2,000 for this next year. We have $2,000 for it in next year's budget as well. Let's go to the next chart. So I want to conclude with the audit. We did complete the audit on 2019. If you've ever been involved in an audit, you know it goes best when the auditors can sit down at the same table with you and they can pepper you with question after question and you can go get their answers quickly. Well, you can't do that when you're having a pandemic. The auditors are working home, our people were working at home. It sometimes took days to get answers. Add to that the fact we had a new accounting staff and a new accounting system. We switched from Logos to QuickBooks this year, if you'll recall. And that was being audited for the first time. With all that, you have a perfect stew for a difficult audit, and that's what we had. The auditors did come up with some significant recommendations, which we have reacted to and are performing against. They adjusted the way we're booking grants and income and expense for restricted accounts. That wasn't as natural in QuickBooks as it was in Logos. They have suggested we beef up our review procedures. Another set of eyes looking at all the checks or things that go out of the office. They suggest we have a separate endowment and reserve funds. We actually have both at the Presbyterian Foundation and at our other advisor, funds that have the endowment and reserves mixed in them, and they are suggesting we take those apart. And then so we have accepted all these. There wasn't, they didn't find any difficulties with management, any fraud, anything like that. Made some adjustments, and in fact, we have asked them to come in about a quarter or two and look things over quickly and make sure that we're going to be in line on hewing to the recommendations. So the last chart, sound like a broken record, I'm sure. But if you are behind on your partnership giving, your per capita, you can help this year come in by catching up. And please budget for per capita and partnership giving next year. the things that we need to do. The list has never been this long, so any help is much appreciated. Although we do know that a lot of us, our churches, are going to struggle estimating what next year will be like for them as well. So thank you for your attention. I don't know if there's a chance to take questions, or we're just moving on and people can email me with whatever they need to ask.
Well, thank you, Craig. Are there any questions for Craig? If you have a question, use the raised hand. No? No questions then?
Thanks for your attention,
Thank you
folks.
for your report, Craig. Next on the agenda, subject of fire, communities, and congregations. I'm going to turn this over to the stated clerk to introduce the speakers. Paul?
Thank you, moderator. We'll first hear from Nancy Ashley, who's the clerk of session at Mackenzie Valley Presbyterian Church. Nancy?
I have unmuted myself, and now I'm going to share my screen. There we go. Okay. Hang on. I'm going the wrong. Okay, so here we are, Mackenzie Valley Presbyterian, just east of Springfield and Eugene. Bend is over here, and here is the Holiday Farm fire between us. And if you zoom in on that a little bit, you see that those red dots are some of the 451 homes that burned. My house is right in here. I still have a house. Most of the people from Mackenzie Valley Presbyterian live down here in the unburned area. I don't know if you can see this pink line. There are about 4 of us that live up here in the burned area. And so because there's only about 20 of us in this church, those other 16 people know the 4 of us well, and they tend to know a lot of other people up the river also well. So let's zoom in just a little bit more. This is the 1 mile around my house. You see that I'm here. This is personal, folks. These burned homes are people that I know the names of. I can walk to their houses, except their houses aren't there anymore. This is a very immediate trauma for me. And so what I found as I wandered around volunteering at relief centers and so forth was that I didn't need socks and so forth. What I needed was to talk. And so I was very excited when I found that the Green Cross was in the area. These are trained volunteers who train in the emotional trauma of disasters. And they fly on their own dime to disasters from Minnesota and Washington and San Antonio. And they go to Hurricane Katrina, and they came here and they were in our area. And I found out that they were giving a presentation. So I went to it, and they had some good information to share. But they only had about 5 people at their presentation. And I knew that they were going to be leaving in a week. And I said, I bet I can get them a bigger audience because they've got good stuff. And so I scurried around, and I had them presenting at my church 4 days later. And I had an audience of 13 people for them. So that was a little bit better. But the Green Cross folks go home eventually. And this trauma was going to remain with us because they had some kind of bad news for us. They gave us this chart, which shows that in the middle of, at the beginning of the disaster, you're all pretty thrilled with those first responders, and you're sticking up signs by the highway, and the heroism is all thrilling and everything. And you have a kind of a honeymoon phase where you go, we can do it. Yes, sir. Mackenzie strong, you know, we can do it. But then the disillusionment kicks in. And 2 weeks ago, the Green Cross people told us we were about here on disillusionment, meaning we had a lot more disillusioned to get. And this here is a year out from the disaster. This is a prediction of how the emotional recovery goes. And so we said to ourselves, gosh, I wonder if we can address this. We're a church. We don't have to be giving away socks. Can we do anything about people's emotional and spiritual state? So Karen Keaty from Westminster Presbyterian in Eugene came up with the idea of doing story sharing events, because we disaster victims like to tell our story. We will buttonhole anybody and tell them the whole story of how we evacuated and what it was like. And that's good for us. That's therapeutic. And so we said, maybe our church can host events where we tell our stories, and we'll bring people in and we'll divide them up into groups of 3 so that there is time for everybody in that group of 3 to tell their story to the other 2 people. And we're going to host our first event like that this coming Sunday afternoon. We'll see how it goes. There are a bunch of people interested in our efforts here. Presbyterian Disaster Assistance is interested in what we're doing, and Lane County is interested in what we're doing. So we're going to give it a shot, see if we can do any good. The other thing that some of us are involved in is some of us in my church are interested in a long-term disaster recovery group that is forming. This has capital letters because that's a thing, a long-term disaster recovery group, and they are formed within counties that have disasters. And we are being advised on how to form this group by the National Voluntary Organizations Active in Disasters. And the cool thing is that their model, it's cool to my way of thinking, is that their model for how to do one of these groups includes an emotional recovery component. And I seem to be feeling like that's the thing that I would like our church to address, is the emotional recovery component. And I also hope that whatever we wind up doing right, we can maybe share with other churches in the Valley, other organizations, and maybe we can learn from them too. So that's what we're doing at Mackenzie Valley. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we will hear from Yvonne and Curtis from Mill City Presbyterian Church.
Hello, everybody. I'm Yvonne Kratka, and this is Curtis Hansen. I'm going to step away so that Curtis can give you an update, and that way you can probably hear him better.
I thank you for this opportunity. The Mill City Church is a small congregation. The fires in Mill City Gates and the San Am Canyon, very devastating to the community. The impact on our congregation, as far as individual and family members, was limited. We had 3 families, 2 of which lost their homes, and 1 family who lost their business. So the session gave responsibility to our stewardship committee to try to be responsive to our congregation and responsive to the community. And I'm the chair of the stewardship committee, so that's my involvement. we focused on two areas of response. The first was our own family members, church family members, and we have been able to pass through a small amount of funds to two of the family members for some immediate needs that they asked for help on. Secondly, we wanted to know what we could do in response to the community, and we created a priority list of programs, agencies that were active in terms of providing help, and with the intent that if we received money, and early on we were advised that there was possibility of money from the Presbytery or perhaps other donations that might come in for help. Ultimately, we in fact received a grant of $5,000 from a community foundation in Wisconsin. And so we have been talking about just how we wanted to use funds that came in. What we ultimately found out, though, was that many of the programs, many of the agencies that were serving in our canyon are pretty well funded right now. Immediate response has a lot of interest, and so in making contacts, we did learn that oftentimes in disasters like ours, when time has passed, interest dwindles a little bit, agencies' action dwindles a little bit. That's a time that needs often arise. And so for the time being, we're reserving the funds that we have available to see what might arise after a little bit of passage of time. Of course, we have several individual members of the church who have been helping out in programs that are helping the canyon. There is the largest aid distribution site is at a community church in Gates. And many of our congregation members have been working there in helping. They are, in fact, just ready to limit the number of days that they're going to be open. And so it will be interesting here as again, time passes, what the needs will be. So that's really our circumstance, our situation. We feel that the community has been devastated, but we have been fortunate as a congregation, and we're really most interested in trying to see what we can do to be helpful in that regard. So that's all from me.
I thank you. I thank you for your report, and I have a question of personal interest, and that is, there's a Christian retreat center northwest of you, not very far. Do you know how they fared in the fire? Do you know who they are?
Can you repeat the name again?
It's a Christian retreat center. I can't think of the name of it. I think it's up near Elkhorn, somewhere like that. Doesn't ring a bell. Well,
yeah, and you're not talking about Upward Bound, are you?
No.
I'm not familiar with it. No, I'm sorry.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you. Our prayers are with you. Thank you very much for your report. Paul?
Next, from Carolina Marshall, stated clerk at, no, clerk of session. I demoted you to stated. You're the clerk of session, Carolina, at First
Thank you.
Presbyterian Church, Phoenix.
Hello. Thank you, Paul. Thank you so much. And thank you to the moderator. It's so good to hear other folks and talking about your disasters. It's helpful. Over 1,000 homes were lost in Phoenix. A very big portion of our business is all down Main Street. It was a very odd fire. It would destroy one side of the street and leave the other side completely all right. Our church is all right. There was some warping of the siding, but everything's fine. Everything's checked out. Across the street from us is completely destroyed, ashes, and the fire jumped around. It was very odd. It's just been devastating, and to figure out what to do with the funds, we've done a lot of good already. We've helped with caregiving for one of our congregation members. We've replaced a bicycle of one of our congregation members. We have partnerships with the Phoenix Talent School District to help. 50% of the students lost their homes. We've helped replace musical instruments, and we are now allowing the Jackson County Fuel Committee to use office space in our church, which is fabulous. They help the underserved, and they are absolutely wonderful. And Nancy from McKenzie Valley, the emotional part of it is so needed. I couldn't even go into town for the first 9 days. I couldn't even, it just was so devastating. We are a congregation of 15, and 4 of our congregation lost their homes, completely everything. And the devastation, it's just complete and utter ash. It's horrible. Are you guys able to hear me well? I can't tell.
Excuse me, your question again?
Can you guys hear me all right?
Yes, we can hear you fine.
Yes.
I think.
Good.
There's a big echo.
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing. I'm hearing some real feedback. So I was wondering.
So is what?
And that's, yes. The word is, has their microphone too close to the speaker.
In this room, right?
Okay. How's that? Is that better?
I think that is.
Good. Okay. Yeah, it's my phone. I'm on my phone, and my husband's in the other room, so I'm in the bedroom. And is that better? That sounds better to me for sure.
Yes.
I think so.
Good. It is an amazing thing to have one side of the street be gone and the other side be fine. And it is me, my house is all right. And survivor's guilt is absolutely a real thing. I didn't ever believe in it before, but it is real. And I haven't slept more than 3 hours since the fire happened. And trying to help others and trying to find we're on a search in Phoenix for executive director and pastor to come and help us. And we're small, but we're mighty. And we are still have our pantry going to help people too. And it's really great to get to come and be at this meeting and talk to all of you who have experienced disaster, and those of you who are here and listening to us. And I know the givers, the pastors and the healers are really experiencing a lot of burnout, because there's just been so much, starting with with COVID and then the disasters. And we really appreciate all of you and understand you too need healing. And I just am so glad I got to be part of this. A lot of times there's I see in the emails for the pastors, and we clerks, we also need, we need support too. And this really helped to be able to tell my story here today. And we at Phoenix hold you all up in the Presbytery and all of the congregations, and appreciate all your support and prayers that we've gotten. And thank you. I think that's what I have for now.
Thank you very much for sharing, and we're very glad you're part of us as well.
Amen.
Paul?
I'm going to invite, I believe, is it Wendy Olson will speak next. And Wendy is at 2 churches on the coast, Waldport, Community Waldport, and Chapel by the Sea in Lincoln City.
Yes, thank you, everybody. And, as you've noticed, each community has a different story about it, but it is, it's really great that you're listening to these stories. So I'll just say a couple of things about our situation. Lincoln City, we had the Otis fire, the Panther Creek, Echo Mountain fire.
Put your earphones on, your echo.
I do have my earphones on.
Oh, really?
Sorry, a little technological too. Sorry about the echo. I don't know why that is. Just a couple of things I want to highlight about our situation. We have a common trauma in that everyone in the community was under some form of evacuation. So we have this whole collective trauma of that evacuation. And then there were over 300 homes destroyed, 3 families from our congregation affected. No. And some of the beautiful things that have been happening is the way that the community is gathering together. There's a massive volunteer cleanup effort that's happening, and I would like to invite anybody in the Presbytery who wants to come out to the coast and help. It's all volunteer, the heavy equipment, the tools, food, equipment, so that neighbors can help one another recover. If it were just to be hired, the estimated cost of cleanup is $10,000. They are being able to do that for $600 per family. So if anybody wants to come help with that, let me know. I'd be happy to hook you up. We could host you in different ways. One of the really great things in our situation is one of our coastal churches in Yachats. They're quite a bit farther south of us, completely unaffected by the fires, but they heard what we were doing and sent a significant donation. So between the 2 congregations, we've been able to raise over $10,000 already and have given out about $4,000 of that and have helped over.
Is so bad, people are trying to go slow or use my computer. You want to use this?
Okay, sorry.
Put this one on. I'm going to switch it to you.
Could be. Okay, then you go ahead and share.
Okay.
Did you put mine on? Yeah.
Yes. So I'll just go back a little bit. It's still echoing.
I hear that. I don't know why.
Sorry. Thank you, Yahweh Community Presbyterian Church, for partnering us.
I think your computers are too close together. I think that's why I'm getting the echo.
And Chapel by the Sea is both working with organizations and directly working with families. And we have committed to adopting a few families and being with them through the years-long process of recovery. And there's a lot more, but with this echo, I'm going to stop there.
All the others who spoke about these fires. I think somebody has a microphone. Speakers. Maybe we should.
Can you turn yours? Can you mute yours?
Okay. Am I unmuted now? Yeah. Okay. So we continue to struggle with technical difficulties, but it's hard for us to imagine the suffering that all of our speakers from the areas affected by the fires have gone through. And my prayers go with all of you, and the best wishes and prayers, I'm sure, of all Presbytery. This ends the Friday meeting, and we will adjourn immediately after our closing prayer, led by Reverend Chris Murphy of First Presbyterian Church in Newburgh.
Hi, everyone. Can everybody hear me okay? All right, thanks.
Without echoes even.
Hey, there you go. Thank you for all that shared about your experience with the fires. Our hearts do go out to you. And I'll be leading us in an exercise together, and then I'll be sharing the closing prayer this evening. And friends, as a reminder, during our meeting today, we are weaving opportunities to experience mind-body practices for health. There are neural cells around the heart that communicate with the brain. I invite you to place your right hand over your heart. Warm and gentle contact in this area causes the brain to send messages of comfort and calm throughout the body. Breathe deeply. The ancient monks believed that God lived in the human heart, and this practice helps us to be more aware of God's presence. So again, with your right hand over your heart, let's take a couple of breaths together. Let's breathe deeply together. And let us now pray. Gracious and loving God, thank you for the gift of meeting together today as friends and colleagues in ministry. We are grateful for your love and sustaining grace in these days of the pandemic and with the tensions that exist in our nation and the broader world. May we be ambassadors of your love and peace, and may our efforts to share the good news of the love of Jesus bring greater unity and justice among all of creation. Continue to open us to the power of you, Holy Spirit. As Lillian reminded us earlier today, God, may you help us be the church reformed and always reforming. May we adapt to the needs of the most vulnerable in our society and those grieving in our communities. Continue to comfort those recovering from the fall fires and those impacted by racial tensions, especially in recent months. Help us to be beacons of hope and help us to find rest in you. By your grace, may we enjoy a restful night's sleep and wake us up to your abundant mercy tomorrow morning for another day of meeting together. In the name of Jesus the Christ, we pray. Amen. And friends, let us now go in the love of God, who is mother and father to us all, in the grace of Jesus the Son, and in the comfort and power of the Holy Spirit. Let us go in peace.
Amen. We stand adjourned until tomorrow morning at 9:30.